After a family dinner on May 16, 1998, 36-year-old Lisa Valdez vanished. Just days later, her lifeless body was discovered in her apartment, brutally murdered. What started as a missing person case soon turned into a shocking investigation, revealing dark secrets and an obsessive killer. This is the story of Lisa's tragic death and the fight for justice that would take 15 years to uncover. Lisa Valdez was born on September 6, 1961, in San Francisco, California. Growing up, Lisa shared a close bond with her mother and brother, despite the absence of her father from their lives. Her family was her foundation, and her relationship with her mother was particularly strong. Lisa's mother always supported her, and the two were inseparable, spending a lot of time together. Their relationship was often seen as perfect by those around them, characterized by love and mutual respect. From a young age, Lisa had a deep passion for dancing. Dance was not only a hobby, but a defining part of her life. She spent hours refining her skills, making it one of her greatest passions. In addition to dancing, Lisa also developed a keen interest in technology. At a time when most people were just beginning to grasp the basics of computers, Lisa dove into the world of IT. She was an early adopter of email, well ahead of many of her peers. This interest in technology guided her professional path, eventually leading her to pursue a career as a software analyst. After college, Lisa moved into a small studio apartment in a prestigious neighborhood of San Francisco, which her mother helped her purchase. Though it was modest in size, the apartment offered a stunning view of the city, and Lisa enjoyed the independence it provided. While her career in IT flourished, she never gave up on her passion for dance. Every week, she would attend practice sessions with her best friend, maintaining that balance between her professional and personal life. Lisa's life seemed to be full of promise, with a bright future ahead of her in both her career and personal pursuits. On May 16, 1998, Lisa Valdez invited her mother and some family friends over for dinner. The evening went by as planned, and after the guests left, Lisa's mother stayed to help with the dishes. Before she left, Lisa promised to call her the next day, but the call never came. Her mother thought little of it at first, assuming that Lisa had simply gotten busy with her day-to-day activities. However, when Lisa didn't show up for dance practice the following day, her mother's concern began to grow. Lisa was always punctual, and missing practice was out of character for her. After another day passed without hearing from Lisa, her mother became even more anxious and began calling Lisa's phone. There was no answer. Despite her repeated attempts to reach her daughter, Lisa remained unreachable. Lisa's colleagues soon noticed her absence at work. They raised alarms after Lisa failed to show up for her shift and didn't respond to any of their calls. This was completely unlike Lisa, who was known for being diligent and responsible. Her colleagues contacted her mother to report the situation, and it was then that her mother decided to take matters into her own hands. Growing more worried, Lisa's mother went to her daughter's apartment complex to check on her. When she arrived, she found police officers at the building, investigating a strange odor emanating from Lisa's unit. The officers had already entered the apartment and discovered Lisa's body. It was clear that something was terribly wrong, and an investigation into her disappearance and death began immediately. When the police entered Lisa Valdez's apartment, they were immediately struck by the signs of a violent struggle. Lisa's body was partially undressed, showing clear indications of a confrontation. The apartment itself was in disarray, but there was no sign of robbery. Lisa's valuable items, including her jewelry, remained untouched. However, there were some unsettling clues that began to emerge, leading investigators to believe the attacker might have been someone Lisa knew. The most shocking piece of evidence was the discovery of Lisa's hair, which had been cut off and taken by the killer. This personal violation suggested that the crime might have been driven by strong emotions or an obsessive motive. Bloodstains were found throughout the apartment, scattered on the floor and the bed, indicating the severity of the struggle that took place. One particularly significant clue was a fingerprint found on the toilet seat. Forensic experts soon realized that this print didn't belong to Lisa. The presence of this fingerprint, along with the lack of forced entry, led investigators to believe that the killer had been allowed into the apartment or had a way to access it without forcing entry. This was a crucial detail, pointing to the possibility that Lisa's killer was someone she trusted, or at least knew. Further investigation revealed no signs of a forced break-in, reinforcing the theory that the attacker had personal access to the apartment. These discoveries shaped the direction of the investigation, with detectives focusing on Lisa's relationships and anyone who might have had a close connection to her. They were now certain that the murder was not a random act of violence, but one driven by personal motives. As the investigation into Lisa Valdez's murder progressed, multiple leads began to surface. One of the first pieces of information came from Lisa's neighbors. They reported noticing a possible break-in attempt at a nearby apartment just days before Lisa's body was discovered. One neighbor observed part of the metal frame on his front door bent, with a faint blood stain visible. He had reported this to the building manager, but no further action had been taken at the time. This discovery raised the possibility that the same person who had tried to break into the neighbor's apartment could also be responsible for Lisa's murder. Another important lead came from Lisa's housekeeper, who had entered the apartment a few days before the body was found. The housekeeper recalled seeing Lisa partially undressed on the floor and hearing a man's voice inside the apartment. Assuming she was interrupting something private, the housekeeper immediately left. The police later concluded that Lisa had likely already been dead by the time the housekeeper arrived, and the man's voice she had heard could have belonged to the killer still inside the apartment. Further evidence also raised questions about the timeline of the crime. Police discovered an untouched envelope with money inside, which was meant for the housekeeper. Lisa always left the money for her the day before her cleaning visits, suggesting that the murder took place after her mother had left for the night. This detail indicated that the crime occurred between midnight and the early morning hours. Additionally, forensic investigators found a fingerprint on the toilet seat and DNA evidence was collected from the crime scene. Despite these crucial clues, no immediate matches were found in the database, leaving the investigation at a standstill as detectives continued to piece together the evidence. Lisa's colleagues were the first to raise alarm about her disappearance when she failed to report to work on May 18, 1998. Known for her responsibility and punctuality, Lisa's absence was completely out of character. Concerned, her colleagues attempted to contact her, but their calls went unanswered. It wasn't until they reached out to Lisa's mother, informing her of the situation, that a formal investigation was initiated. Lisa's mother, increasingly worried, immediately went to her daughter's apartment to check on her. Upon her arrival, she found the police already at the building, investigating the strange odor emanating from Lisa's unit. This led to the discovery of Lisa's body and marked the beginning of a homicide investigation. As the police started to gather evidence, they focused on Lisa's personal life, beginning with her acquaintances and relationships. One of the first individuals questioned was Lisa's ex-boyfriend, who had recently been in contact with her. He initially denied any involvement in the crime and refused to provide a DNA sample when requested. However, after continued pressure from the investigators, he eventually submitted the sample. Despite the strong suspicion surrounding him, the DNA test results revealed no match to the evidence found at the crime scene. His alibi and lack of any physical evidence connecting him to the murder led to his exclusion as a suspect, and the investigation shifted focus to other potential leads. With the first suspect ruled out, the police continued to explore new angles, determined to find the true perpetrator behind Lisa's brutal murder. After years of following dead ends, the investigation into Lisa Valdez's murder saw a significant breakthrough. Thanks to advancements in DNA testing, detectives were finally able to link the DNA found at the crime scene to Anthony Hughes, a man with a criminal history. The match was made possible through the FBI's expanded DNA databases, which had recently improved their capabilities to track connections between DNA samples and known offenders. Anthony Hughes had been arrested in the past for various crimes, but none of those offenses had required his DNA to be entered into the database. However, with the advent of stricter laws in California, Hughes's DNA was collected after a shoplifting arrest and entered into the database. This led to the crucial match, confirming his connection to the crime scene. Further investigation revealed that Lisa Valdez had known Hughes from high school, where they had briefly dated. Although they hadn't been in contact for years, this past relationship raised red flags for the investigators. Hughes's involvement in the case seemed to go beyond just a passing acquaintance. It was soon discovered that Hughes had been obsessed with Lisa, which further explained his potential motive for the crime. The obsessive nature of his past feelings for Lisa was now seen in a much darker light. It became increasingly clear that his involvement in the murder could have been driven by unresolved emotions and a deep-seated fixation on her. This DNA match, combined with the knowledge of Hughes's obsession with Lisa, made him the prime suspect in the investigation. Detectives now had the information they needed to focus their efforts on Hughes as the key figure in Lisa's tragic death. Anthony Hughes was arrested after his DNA matched the evidence found at Lisa Valdez's crime scene. Initially, Hughes denied knowing Lisa recently and claimed they had no connection at the time of her death. However, as the interrogation continued, he eventually admitted that they had known each other from high school. Despite this acknowledgement, Hughes insisted that he had not been in contact with her for years and denied any involvement in her murder. During his interrogation, Hughes exhibited strange behavior that raised further suspicions. At times, he became tearful, claiming he was being framed for a crime he did not commit. He appeared distressed and upset, but his emotional outbursts only added to the investigators' concerns. His reactions seemed to be more focused on avoiding responsibility rather than offering any helpful information. Further investigation into Hughes's life revealed unsettling details about his obsession with Lisa. Dozens of photos of Lisa were found in his home, further indicating a fixation that went beyond mere acquaintance. These images painted a disturbing picture of Hughes's feelings toward Lisa, showing that his interest in her was far from innocent. The presence of these photos raised the question of whether his obsession had fueled the brutal nature of the crime. Despite his claims of innocence, the mounting evidence against Hughes was undeniable. The DNA match, combined with the discovery of the photos and his strange behavior during the interrogation, left detectives increasingly confident in their belief that Hughes was involved in Lisa's murder. The emotional outbursts, combined with the physical evidence, confirmed their suspicions, making it clear that Hughes was the prime suspect in the case. The trial of Anthony Hughes began with his defense team arguing that his physical condition prevented him from committing the murder. They claimed that Hughes had been diagnosed with a medical condition that weakened his muscles, making it difficult for him to perform repetitive movements, including the act of stabbing. The defense suggested that his condition made it improbable for him to have inflicted over 20 stab wounds on Lisa Valdez. However, medical experts testified that Hughes's condition was under control and that treatment had been effective. The prosecution also presented strong evidence linking Hughes to the crime scene. DNA found at the scene, including blood and skin particles, was matched to Hughes, as was the fingerprint found on the toilet seat. This evidence established a clear connection between Hughes and the murder. Despite his defense's arguments, the jury found Hughes guilty of second-degree murder. The charge of sexual assault was not pursued, as the evidence was not sufficient to support the claim. The lack of direct evidence for sexual assault, combined with the brutality of the murder, led to the conviction of second-degree murder instead. Throughout the trial, Hughes continued to protest his innocence. He claimed he had not been involved in Lisa's death and denied the accusations against him. His protests were not enough to sway the jury, who carefully considered the evidence and testimonies presented. The conviction marked the end of a long and difficult legal process for Lisa Valdez's family and friends, and they finally had the closure they had been seeking for years. The conviction of Anthony Hughes brought a sense of relief to Lisa Valdez's family and friends, but the pain of her loss continued to linger. For Maisa Robinson, Lisa's best friend, justice finally being served after 15 years was a bittersweet victory. She had long hoped for this moment, but no amount of legal closure could undo the years of grief. The brutal murder of a woman so full of life, with such promise, left an indelible mark on all who knew her. Lisa's mother, who had spent years tirelessly advocating for justice, remained vocal in her belief that Hughes should never be granted parole. The thought of him potentially being released after serving a fraction of his sentence was a painful one. Her daughter's absence was a constant source of anguish, and her fight for justice didn't end with Hughes' conviction. She continued to work to ensure that her daughter's murderer never had the chance to walk free again. The case remained a painful reminder of Lisa's vibrant and loving spirit that was tragically taken. Though justice had been served, those closest to her were forever affected by her loss. Lisa's story continued to resonate with her family, friends, and anyone who followed the case. Her memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her, and her legacy is one of resilience, love, and the unbreakable bond she shared with her loved ones. Despite the pain, Lisa's life and the fight for justice remain a testament to her strength and the lasting impact she had on those around her.